Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's June 8th. It'll be a chart lesson for the day. And in the big picture, this is just a range day. You can clearly see prices working off the midline here in the middle. And as we headed back to the highs, we ran into a good bit of resistance up here. I think that's where we actually ran into some resistance. Yeah, you can see we've had resistance in this same area across here yesterday. So um, the interesting part is this price level. Actually, it's right in here. Is the I think it's 42.11 or so. Is the this across here is pretty much support on the daily chart. If you remember me showing that, here's that daily chart, and you can see this is the resistance across the top of that range, and we've broken out and we've come back and tested it. So if this holds, we could continue higher again now, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. And there might even be somewhat of a trend line working up here, somewhere in here, um, like so. But I would go with this range for now and maybe look for a trend to start off the top here if we start working higher. That's the way I would look at it. So anyway, this is the support for the last couple of days, which is basically the top of the range. So I hope that makes sense. But I wanted to show you that just so you could see that that's what these lows were down in here, bouncing off that support area. So anyway, let's again, early on this morning we had this big spike up and then we found resistance and we started trending lower here. We really confirmed this trend line right here, and we had a break, a huge move to a new low. We bounced, had a spike up, and then we just, the rest of the day, really from 11 o'clock on, we didn't have much. We were just kind of were stuck in this range. And you can see not much even happened after 2 o'clock today. So even though the market seemed to have a little more movement today, the latter part of the day was probably slower than it was yesterday. So this thing is slowing down a little bit. And, is it here to stay? Who knows? We just have to watch it and see what happens. I mean, it looked like we were really going to have some good movement today. And we really did up until lunchtime. And after lunch, it just kind of died off. So, but anyway, let's zoom in, talk about the trades, and wrap this day up. But this was a spike and a channel up, but we quickly found some resistance up here. We tried to go higher once, twice, three times, and you don't want to be going short right here yet because we don't have a new high in place. But eventually we finally made that last high, then we made a failed or a lower high here. It broke higher and failed and turned down. I don't think I would wait and go short right here, but we're overdue to come back to the trend line. So if you wanted to go short one tick below that bar on this lower high, I wouldn't have any problem with it. And it might be worth, if you really want to be super aggressive, you might go short right there. I'd wait on the true failure or the reversal, which doesn't come to right here when we get on the other side. It pulls back. And again, if I didn't enter this on the engulfing bar, I don't know that I would enter down here when it didn't break lower on that next bar, because by that point, now it looks like congestion. Here it looks like a trap. Uh, it easily works out either way, but I believe that I would only enter on the engulfing bar right here. And once you saw those two matching lows, I'd probably hold off on that trade. A few minutes later, we get this second entry short that the trend line was actually confirmed here, but I'd say this one certainly confirms it. And you can see that's where we really started the big move from. And you'd also probably want to measure this leg here and just see, kind of compare that for your next measure. We went much further than that. I think this gave people enough traders confidence that, hey, we're probably going to trend lower here now, because this looked a little congestive all working up here. But by the time we came back on this second entry, and if you had a good signal bar there, by all means take that trade. But if not, you get a lower high right here. Nice signal bar. I like going short right there. And that was probably the move of the morning right there. Had a nice move, easy move down. easy to get a runner there. The problem is you might have a little trouble catching this trade. That's the real thing. If you probably couldn't get in on a stop, so you had to use a limit order, and you wouldn't have been able to get anything extra on it. You probably would have got filled if you just dropped your limit order where it's supposed to go, but I doubt you'd get filled on that any other way. And you may not even get filled on a limit order. So it just depends on how quick you got it in there. But that's the trade of the morning if you can catch it. Then we just kind of move sideways. No trades here. One trader asked me about this trade. That's too much congestion. I don't have it drawn on here, but I mean, hopefully you can see that. You don't want to go short right there into that. It would have ended up working, but it's just not worth it. Same thing here. You just drop down, and if you do your measured moves, you can see we actually made a measured move down to right about there, and then we ran back up. If you're just patient, you get this nice, notice the new low, first entry when it broke lower here, you move on up, second entry short right there. Generally, I'd want to see this come back to the upper trend line, but you had this little trading range here, and so that's like a failed break higher. And on that second entry with two nice, easy to read legs up, we're probably going to pull back and test that even if we're going to go higher. So I like that trade. And if you wait a few minutes later, you get a first entry and then a second entry long that fails. So now you got a failed second entry long. When this turns back down, I like going short there. Another quick scalp, nothing big, because we just end up staying in this larger range, as you can see here. Again, too much congestion here, no reason to enter there. We run back up, you get a break, new high. You come back and you finally get a lower high right here off of that upper side with a nice signal bar. So I like going short right there. And then it comes back, and now you get a failed second entry long, a triple test. The signal bar is not very good if you just were going by the triple test, but because it's a failed second entry long, I like going short there. You don't know that it's going to take off like this. You're just really looking for it to run to the other side of the channel here. But when it drops through like that, it's really tempting to go short right here, but that's so congestive. You could get burned right there easily because you expect this to possibly fail, even if it's only momentarily, and that's exactly what happened. It failed, but it was only momentarily, and then we were going hard the other direction. So I don't think you want to go long or short right there, really. It's a shame because you get a nice move, but if you caught this trade, which was easy to catch, you should be able to ride this one all the way down. You should have had a runner there too. So, of course, you might have exited your runner at the support here, but the way it dropped through right there, if you had your runner on down here, I wouldn't have tightened it up or anything right there. I would have waited to see what it was going to do. And of course, it runs down here, finds support, bounces, it tries to go short once, and you actually get a second entry short right there. I didn't mark that one. There's not a lot of room right there. It triggered really super fast. That's in congestion. We're way away from the EMA. I think you're better to wait and see if you can't catch a ride back to the other side. And sure enough, you get a second entry right there that reverses real quickly. So I like taking this back up. And actually, by the time it broke higher, there's another break lower and you get a higher low. So really you could enter them either way here. You could have really this would technically be your original signal bar, but really the entry was on this bar. So this one's a little convoluted here. You technically, actually, let me back up. You technically could enter above here on the failure, but you could enter here on the higher low. So hope that makes sense. And it runs on up. And there's actually a failure right here, but that's not a very good failed setup. It doesn't come back to the EMA, but you can see once it does, it bounces. It makes a higher low here. It was too bad it wasn't a good signal bar because that would have been a good entry right there. And we run on up, and there's just no way to enter this up here. Actually, let me come back to this one more time. This, you can't really see it here. This broke lower first and turned up, so you could actually go long. I like going long on the engulfing bar, so really I had it marked right the first time, but I just didn't explain that very well. So let's put that back now that you can see that. So this is where your signal bar, this is technically your signal bar, and you could have entered it either, the failure was right here, so you had to enter this one one tick above this bar, although your signal stop has to go, your safety stop has to go below your signal bar, so it has to go right there. So that's why it's marked, but your entry is one tick above this bar. So I hope I made that clear. And then you had a high or low, which you could have entered here if you weren't already in this trade. Or if you'd already scalped out or anything, you could have entered in this trade again here. So I hope that's clear. And you just don't really get another chance to enter this move. You could have got in either one of these, and probably you may not have got a runner on this one, but you probably would have this one. Or I know you would have on this one, because this never checks up. It just keeps going, and that would have been a great run up. And we run up and just go into this, and you had to be really patient because there's just no setups in here. This is just too congestive and no direction. I mean, you got your break and a new high, and you expect you might get another leg up, but you can't go long into that resistance right there here, because this is what happens. You get stuck. You get stopped out only to watch it go exactly where you thought it would go. But since you already had a new high, I don't like entering this second entry on this up-down bar below the EMA. Notice that you do have a new high here. And so you get a first entry. And so when it broke higher, it's a second entry. And it ended up working out. There's actually a high or low right here that I'm more apt to take that right there, as long as you still got room to get out, than I would to take this one. So this was another possibility right here. And you could even argue for this one to be green. I mean, I'm just not crazy about either one of them, because you could get a reversal because this is played out over here. And of course, you get two legs up right to the top again. And generally you want to wait on a lower high, but with this being a true second entry and a little bit of room back to the EMA, and being a failed break by only a couple of ticks, this is probably going to run down pretty quickly. And you might catch a high that keeps going back down. And so I like that trade. And if you waited on a lower high, you don't get an entry. Technically, you could say this was a lower high here, but I think we've had a little bit too much movement. I mean, this was at 12:45, 12:40, and this is already, almost an hour later. So even though it doesn't look like it doesn't happen very far away, it's over an hour away. So I don't trust this as treating it as a lower high, especially with a little bit of sideways action there. So I think you need a lower high, and by the time you get one, you're just going sideways into the EMA, so you don't want to go short right there either. And it actually turns up. There's actually a second entry long, and this was really tempting to go long. And that's another thing too. You really traded up into this. So once this thing continued on, the bias, you have to assume the bias is up, because when you trade into a little range like this, generally if it's going to succeed, it's going to break out with the trend that it traded up into. Early on, you're thinking it may reverse here, but once it's pretty clear this is a range, you're probably looking to buy more than you are to sell. And in that case, with this little trade right here, right off the midline, if you had a decent, I mean, that signal bar is close to closing in the top third, but I was a little scared of it being this late in the day. But I really liked that trade and felt it was a one to take, and I didn't take it, obviously, and I didn't end up marking it, because I try to use my thinking. If I see, if I'm watching the chart when something actually sets up, when I go back and remark it, I try to use my thought process at the time, so that I'm not marking every trade after the fact, if that makes sense. And at the time, I felt that was just, that signal bar was not good enough. As bad as I liked that trade, and I was really tempted to enter it, I just didn't think the signal bar was good enough. But you can see, is it in the top 1/3? I don't know. I mean, how many ticks is it? It's only 5 ticks. So it looks like it closes 3 ticks instead of 2. So I guess maybe that's more than half, but I don't think it's in the top 1/3. I mean, I don't know how you get 1/3 of 5 ticks. What is that? That's gonna be some odd number that you can't meet with 5 ticks. So anyway, I don't think I didn't like it in real time, so didn't mean to go into a long discussion, but I wanted to explain that and kind of tell you how I mark some of these. If I'm, if it's during a time when I'm actually looking at the chart and watching it, and then I try to mark the trade based on my thought process in real time versus my thought process after the fact. Because sometimes you'll see it slightly different after you go back the second time than you might the first time. But doesn't change anything. It's still a second entry. It's off the midline, but we just came off the top. You are expecting prices to go higher on a breakout. They may fail, but you would expect them to go higher here for a little bit. And that's what happened. It bounces out. But the key is, if you were going long right into that, I'd say no. As long as there's enough room too there to scalp out, you got to have enough room. Which I think there's just enough room to get out there maybe. Anyway, that's what I saw today. There's a few nice trades here. Still a little slow. It's really a shame we couldn't find a good entry on this. This was a second entry long here too. New high, first entry, second entry. But that bar is just not good enough. You just can't go long. Even though prices are probably reversing here, you can't go long there because the next time you do it, I can promise you what will happen to you. You'll get burned. It never fails. So just be real careful with it. Follow the rules. Even though sometimes you'll see a big move like that and you'll think don't beat yourself up over it, because if there's not a setup, you did the right thing. And that's sometimes hard for newer traders to understand. They'll see a big move and they'll get all upset because they talk themselves out of it or whatever. And then they'll remember that the next time, and they'll say, I remember last time I was too chicken to take this trade, and this time I'm not letting them fool me. And guess what? This looks very similar right here, and you enter right here, and it goes one tick higher and turns and stops you out instantly. So if you followed the rules and prices still made a big move, then there's nothing you can do about it. You did the right thing, and yes, it's frustrating to see a big move like this and not being able to catch it. But that's what good traders, experienced, disciplined traders do. And that's why they're winners and not losers. Sure, they miss some good trades, but they don't get hung up in the bad ones by breaking the rules because they see it occasionally take off. So just remember that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next